Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're really zeroing in on a specific role, the communications technologist.
A really vital one these days.
Absolutely. And we're doing this by looking at some interview questions from Kaplan and also getting some perspective from a blog post by Andre Mendez.
It's a neat way to understand a job, actually. Look at how they hire for it.
Exactly. Our goal here is to give you, the listener, a really clear, practical understanding of what this role involves, what skills matter.
Yeah, cut through the noise, give you the core insights without, drowning you in technical details. A quick, useful picture.
So let's dive in. The questions themselves tell a story. That first one, what experience do you have in communications technology?
Right off the bat, it tells you something crucial.
Yeah.
It signals this is a field where practical, hands-on knowledge, it's not just nice to have, it's essential.
Okay, so less about theory, more about have you actually done this?
Precisely. Have you worked with specific tech? Let's say, things like XYZ or ABC systems, the kind of gear they actually use.
Right, it's like have you actually rolled up your sleeves?
Gotten your hands dirty with installation, maintenance.
And the big one, troubleshooting, right?
Yeah,
Fixing things when they break.
exactly. And underpinning all that is an understanding of industry standards, the proper way to do things.
So if you're wondering how all our devices talk to each other so smoothly,
This role is right in the middle of making that happen. That practical knowledge is key.
and I guess that practical bit leads to bigger things, like handling whole projects.
Yeah, that's often the next step. They'll ask something like, can you explain a complex communications technology project you've completed?
Ah, okay. So they're testing your ability to apply that knowledge on a larger scale.
Exactly. It's about managing complexity, lots of moving parts.
Can you give an example, like what kind of project?
Well, imagine implementing a completely new wireless network for a company. Let's call it XYZ company.
Okay, that sounds like more than just setting up a home router.
Oh, definitely. You're talking about ensuring seamless coverage, maybe in a huge building.
Right, no dead spots.
And security. Really tight security protocols need to be in place. Digital locks and keys, as you said earlier.
And coordinating with different teams, I bet.
Absolutely. You're often working with IT, maybe facilities, other departments. It involves a lot of planning, coordination.
So it's almost like being a project manager, too,
Yeah.
keeping things on time, on budget.
In many ways, yes. It really shows that the role isn't just technical. There's a management aspect.
Okay, that makes sense. But projects rarely go perfectly right. What about when things go wrong?
Well, that's where the troubleshooting question comes in. How do you handle troubleshooting and problem solving?
The inevitable glitches.
Exactly. And they want to know your method. Do you have a systematic way of figuring things out?
And the Kaplan source suggests a pretty logical process for that.
Yeah, it's quite structured. First, you identify the symptoms, what's actually happening.
Okay, diagnose the problem.
Then gather information, like a detective collecting clues. Then you start ruling things out, eliminate potential causes until you find the root cause.
Find the real culprit.
Then implement the fix. And this is important. Verify it actually worked.
Test it afterwards. Don't just assume it's fixed.
Exactly. It's a solid framework. Honestly, useful well beyond just tech support, I think. Something valuable for you, listening, perhaps.
Definitely a good takeaway. Okay, so we've covered experience, projects, troubleshooting. What about keeping up with changes? Tech moves so fast.
Crucial point. That question, how do you stay current with the latest communications technology developments, gets right to that.
Because standing still isn't really an option in this field.
Not at all. You fall behind quickly. So they want to see that you're proactive about learning.
And how do people typically do that? What are they looking for?
Well, things like reading industry publications, the specialized journals and websites,
Okay, staying informed.
attending conferences, workshops, getting exposure to new ideas, new tech.
Networking with peers too, I suppose.
Yeah, and maybe joining professional organizations. The sources mention something like the XYZ Association as an example, places where you hear about the latest trends and innovations.
It really emphasizes that it's a dynamic field.
Yeah,
Constant learning is part of the job description, really.
absolutely. Like staying current in medicine or law, it's ongoing.
Right. Now, let's shift gears a bit. What about the core network stuff? Design, architecture.
Yes. Foundational skills. The question, what is your experience with network design and architecture, hits that directly.
So this is about planning how everything connects, the blueprint.
Exactly. The blueprint for how all the communication systems in an organization talk to each other. It's the underlying structure.
And this isn't just small scale, right?
No, no. They expect experience designing and implementing networks for potentially all sorts of clients. Small businesses, maybe, but also large enterprises with really complex needs.
So you need to know the standard ways of doing things, protocols and such.
Definitely. Familiarity with industry standard protocols is key, and experience with the actual hardware, routers, switches, and the software that runs it all.
Building that invisible infrastructure we rely on.
Precisely.
And speaking of protocols, there's often a specific question about that too, isn't there? What is your experience with communication protocols?
Yes, drilling down into those fundamental rules.
Like TCP/IP, things like that.
Exactly. TCP/IP, UDP, HTTP. These are like the languages or rule books for how data gets sent across networks. The internet relies on them.
So like the internet's postal service, making sure things get delivered reliably.
That's a good analogy for TCP/IP, yeah. It ensures reliable delivery. But you need more than just knowing what they are.
You need practical experience.
All right. Configuring them on different devices, different platforms, and troubleshooting when they don't work right, which definitely happens.
And knowing the best practices. How to use them securely, efficiently.
Paramount. It's a really core technical skill. You can't function effectively in this role without that fluency.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of the technical ground. But the Andre Mendez article mentions interviews aren't just tech questions, right?
That's a very important point, yes. It's not purely a tech quiz.
What else comes up?
You should definitely expect behavioral questions.
Like, tell me about a time when...
Exactly. Tell me about a challenge. Describe a time you worked in a team. How did you handle a conflict? That sort of thing.
Assessing soft skills, basically. How you operate as a person.
Precisely. And situational questions, too. What would you do if X happened? They want to gauge your judgment and how you'd fit into their work environment, their team culture.
So being technically brilliant isn't quite enough. You need those other skills, too. Communication skills in the broader sense.
Absolutely. Explaining complex tech to people who aren't technical. That's a huge skill.
Makes sense. And you mentioned the Mendez piece points to a downloadable PDF of questions for listeners who want to dig deeper.
Yeah, it mentions that as a resource for further exploration if people are interested in seeing more examples.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's try and wrap this up. What are the big takeaways from this deep dive into the communications technologist role based on these interview angles?
Well, I think it's clear it's a role that demands a really solid technical base. Real hands-on experience is non-negotiable.
Right. Installation, maintenance, and especially that troubleshooting skill.
Definitely. And we saw how project management often folds into it, especially for bigger implementations.
Yeah, managing projects, timelines, budgets.
Yeah.
It's more than just fixing wires.
Yeah.
And that systematic approach to problem solving seems critical.
Absolutely. Logical, step by step. Plus, in such a fast-moving field, that commitment to continuous learning.
Keeping up with new tech, new trends, it's essential, not just advisable.
For sure. And underlying it all is that deep understanding of network design, architecture, and those fundamental communication protocols.
The rules of the digital road.
Exactly. They make everything else possible.
Okay, so to leave our listeners with something to chew on, here's a thought. Given how quickly everything's evolving, what emerging communication technologies do you think will become absolutely essential for these professionals, say, in the next few years?
That's a great question. Maybe things around advanced IoT connectivity or the next generation of network security.
Yeah, lots to think about. It really highlights just how vital and constantly changing this field is.